Hello! Welcome to Marshall Gold Discovery, State Historic Park. Anybody joining us yet? Wave if you are. We are so excited to be doing our first Facebook Live video today. Welcome to Virtual Gold Rush Live 2020. I see a few people joining us. Hi! I'm gonna give it like a minute just to let people sign on. It is a gorgeous day out here. It's not too cold, it's not too hot. We're expecting some rain in a couple days. Man, could we use it? Hi! Well, my name is Holly Fain, and I'm the Interpreter 1 here at Marshall Gold Discovery State Historic Park. So excited to be bringing you guys virtual Gold Rush Live this year. Unfortunately, we couldn't do Gold Rush Live in person. I know so many of you have come out to visit us for that event, but we didn't want to miss out completely, so we are going to bring it to you virtually. So remember to tune in at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, and 2 o'clock today and tomorrow, where we will bring you a different character, a different demonstration, and a different story from the Gold Rush. So while we're waiting for a few more people to come on here, I want to let you guys know that this is actually a really special day, because can anybody use the chat part of this and let me know, why is October 8th an important day? Does anybody know what is important about October 8th? Anybody? Any thoughts? Let's see if I can pull it up. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Yeah? October 8th is James Marshall's birthday. So how perfect is it that today is October 8th and we are going to start our virtual Gold Rush Live by interviewing James Marshall himself. I think that is awesome, the timing that worked out on that. So I'm going to switch it over to James Marshall himself. I see some people. It is almost Halloween. That's a good guess. So let's switch it around. I'm going to introduce James Marshall, and he's going to tell you guys a little bit about the discovery of gold, why he was out here in Coloma to begin with, and we'll kick everything off. It looks like we have some people ready to go. So let's switch it over. Give me a second here. We're gonna get a little closer to him. Now, because of social distancing, I'm gonna stand behind the camera here and interview Mr. Marshall as we need to, but I'm gonna hand it over to you, James Marshall, and if you could just tell us a little bit about why you were out here, what you were up to, and then what happened that was so fateful to California history and the United States history.
Certainly, Holly. I was working for John Sutter down at Sutter's Fort, and I'd worked for him for a couple of years, and he asked me one day if I could build a sawmill. And I said, yes, I can. I worked at one as a young man. I remember how it was constructed. And he said, well, go up in the mountains and find a place to build a sawmill for me. And I said, I'll build a sawmill, but I want it to be a partnership. Now, I was 37 years old at the time, and I'd always worked for other people. So this was an opportunity for me to have my own business. And we agreed on that. He will supply the laborers and all the metal parts required. I will supply the plans, and I will oversee the construction. So I came up here in the mountains and I found this spot, and it had the three things that I'm looking for. It had a fast-moving stream to power the sawmill, South Fork of the American River. Ponderosa pine trees, they grow tall and straight, and that's what we were going to cut up for lumber. And the third and most important thing is, this site is accessible by wagon. We knew that we couldn't take the wood and put it in the river and let it flow down to Sutter's Fort, even though this river does go by the fort. There's a waterfall between here and the fort. We knew the wood wouldn't survive. So we had to bring all the wood out of here by wagon. Also, we had to supply the people that were here with food and tools and so forth. So it was very important that we have a wagon road to the site. So, who builds a sawmill? The Mormon boys. These are members of the Mormon battalion. They had come to California to fight Mexico, and by the time they got here, the war was over. They are going to do the heavy labor. And the Wimmer family is here, Peter and Jenny Wimmer, and 3 of their small children. Jenny's going to be the camp cook. Peter will be in charge of the Native American laborers who will dig the ditch. Now, we couldn't build the sawmill in the river. We knew that this river, it's an uncontrolled river, so in the spring it rises dramatically, and we figured it would probably wash the sawmill away. So we brought the water to the sawmill using a ditch. And that ditch, in those days, we called that a mill race. And the first part of the ditch was the head race, and then that portion of the ditch that took the water back to the river is called the tail race. And every morning, I would get up and inspect what was going on with the construction before the workmen would get here. And by January of 1848, we had this thing almost completed. We didn't have a roof on it yet, but all the mechanical parts were in place, and we wanted to see if it was actually going to work or not. So we opened up the floodgates to allow the water to flow through the mill race, and everything was working. The flutter wheel was turning, the blade was going up and down, it was cutting wood. But then someone noticed that water is backing up in the tail race, that portion of the ditch that took the water back to the river. And it continued to back up until finally it stopped the flutter wheel. We were in trouble. We hadn't dug the tail race deep enough. So we stopped the flow of water, allowed the water to dissipate, and then we started digging the tail race deeper. The morning of January 24th, 1848, I'm down there in the tail race looking at the job site. And I look down, I'm standing on a high spot, I look down into the water, and there at my feet is something very shiny. It's gold in color, and it looks like it's metal. I picked it up. I put it on a rock. I started pounding it. Now, I have a 5th grade education. My favorite subjects are astronomy and geology. I knew that gold found in nature would be very soft and malleable. And so by beating it between those rocks, I was testing it. And sure enough, it flattened out. And then I looked around at my feet and I realized there were all of these golden particles all around me. I took my hat off, caved the top of it in, and started picking them up. In a half hour's time, I picked up $15 worth of gold. That's $8.50 right there. I was a pretty happy camper. You know, we were making $1 a day here, and I just picked up $15. 15 days' wages. I went over to the workmen. They had just finished breakfast, and I told the boys, I said, "Boys, I believe I found me a gold mine." The first one said, "I don't think so." So everybody had a test. One of the boys had a gold coin left over from his service with the Mormon battalion. They got paid off down in San Diego after the war was over. We compared the gold coin to the gold that I had found, weight and color. And then Jenny Wimmer comes by, the camp cook. Jenny Wimmer is the only non-native woman in the entire Sierra Nevada mountains, and she's the only person present who had ever seen native gold. Everyone had seen gold coins, everyone had seen jewelry, but Jenny, as a little girl, had panned for gold in the first gold rush in the United States to Dahlonega, Georgia. And she had a test for gold. She mixed white ash from the fire pit with water to create lye. Lye is a very caustic substance. It will create, if you put copper in lye, it would oxidize. In other words, it would turn green, but it won't do anything to gold. Jenny knew that, and that was her test. We tested it, and sure enough, it stayed shiny. Jenny said it was gold. A couple of days later, I took a medicine bottle full of gold down to Sutter's Fort. There we did a specific gravity test on the gold, proving definitively that this was gold. And then John Sutter asked me to keep it a secret. And I said, "Sure, I don't care." Well, the problem was how many people knew the secret. Now, there were 5 of the Mormon boys here, and the Wimmer family, there's 5 of them, Peter Burnett was here. I know, Sutter knows, a teamster that brought some supplies knows. Can that many people keep a secret? No. So the word gets out and the world rushes in. In 1848, we estimate the population of California at between 8 and 12,000 people for the whole state. And the very next year, 90,000 people show up here. That first year, we estimate we found $10 million worth of gold, when gold was valued at $20 an ounce. That figures out to an ounce of gold per person per day. This is an ounce of gold, a $20 gold coin. The very next year, when the 49ers get here, they found $50 million worth of gold. But when we split it between all those people, we're finding $10 worth of gold per person per day. In 1850, another 90,000 people show up. They find $75 million worth of gold. But when we split it between all those people, we're down to $5 per person per day. You get here a little late, 1853, 54, you're making $1 a day. This is a silver dollar. You should have stayed home if you got here late. Because 10% of the people that start for California don't make it. They die of some mostly waterborne diseases. And once you get here, in the first 2 years of being here, you have a 10 to 15% chance of dying. Here again, because of waterborne disease.
So James, we have a couple questions to ask
Certainly.
you. And then everybody who's listening right now, if you have any questions, go ahead and type them in and I will read them out loud to James Marshall. James, can you show us and tell us how big the piece of gold was that you found?
Certainly. The first piece was about this big. It was about half the size of a pea. And it started the greatest mass migration of human beings ever up until that time. Just that one little piece of gold.
That little thing. So I know a lot of people, when we get our fourth graders out here, they think it was some huge rock and that, you know, everybody got rich. And did everybody get rich?
We figure about 5% of the people that came to California went home feeling wealthy. 5%. That's one person out of 20.
Did you get rich discovering gold?
I certainly did not. I chased that tiger's tail for a while after the sawmill. I sold the sawmill to some other people and then went out looking for gold myself. And no, I never got rich.
So one of the questions that I'm seeing is that fool's gold in your hand that you're showing us?
No, this is real gold. Yeah.
And is there still gold to be found out there?
Yes. In fact, we've only found 10 to 15% of the gold in California. But most of the gold that remains isn't placer gold, like those three pieces I just showed you. Most of what remains is hard rock gold like this. This is a piece of quartz that has a vein of gold running through it. This will be crushed in the stamp mill, and mercury in the old days would be used to pull the particles of gold away from the rock and water that it's mixed with. Then the mercury would be boiled away from the gold. You'd take that gold to the mint in San Francisco, and there they would make gold coins out of it, like this $20 gold piece.
And then James Marshall, our next question is, where was gold found? Do you mind pointing it out?
Yes, it was found just beyond the mill here. There's a patio area over there overlooking the remnant of the tail race.
So the next question is, how many types of gold are there?
There's only one gold, so to speak. It's an element. It cannot be destroyed and it cannot be produced. But it's found in a number of different areas. The originally all the gold was found in quartz like this. But over time, the quartz breaks down, the gold migrates to other areas, and so it is found in a number of different areas. But gold is gold.
And can you explain a little bit about how people found out about the gold discovery? How did that word get out that you had found gold here?
Literally, John Sutter wrote a letter to a friend of his and told him that they had found gold at the sawmill. the Mormon boys that were here told the other Mormons in California about the gold discovery, and they immediately started looking for gold, and that's why we have a place called Mormon Island, which was extremely rich in gold, which is down on the Sacramento River. So it was word of mouth, letter, and it was pretty exciting to think that you could actually come here, go down to the river, and pick money up. Money that you could spend in any store in the world.
So right now you're standing in front of Sutter's Mill, the mill that was built, that while building it you discovered that piece of gold. And then in the park we do have gold panning that is allowed down near the river, and if you come visit us we would be happy to tell you where that location is when you come to our museum. And we also do gold panning lessons so that you may also get that chance discovery of finding gold that James Marshall did. I see one more question on there that I really like. How did you feel about being there in the middle of the gold rush and not getting rich?
It was extremely frustrating, extremely so, because a man from Australia came here during the gold rush, looked around. He says that he met me. I don't recall it. But he went back to Australia and he looked around here and he said, I've seen areas just like this in Australia. I'm going to go back there and look for gold. And he found it. And the government of Australia gave him 35,000 pounds. That's money. And the British government gave him 50,000 pounds for his discovery. I got nothing.
I'm sorry, James Marshall. One more question that just came in is, who was the person who wrote in the journal about the gold discovery? Whose journal did that belong to?
Well, there were three of the Mormon boys kept journals, and the best one was Henry Bigler's. And when I was showing the gold to the workman, he turned to the man next to him, pulled out his pocket diary and a pencil, turned to him and said, I'm going to write this down. This might be important someday. And what he wrote was, on this day, the boss of the mill, James Marshall, discovered gold.
I'm so glad we have that journal.
Yes.
What a great documentation. Another question. The question is, how do people find gold? Do you want to list the three main methods? The placer and...
Yeah, hard rock gold, placer gold. Placer gold mining is, there's a bunch of different ways you can do that. You can do that with a pan or a rocker or a cradle, a sluice box, or you can hydraulic mine. You can shoot a stream of water at the side of an old hill that has a old stream bed in it that contains gold. You can dredge with machinery, huge buckets, pulling gravel out of the river and putting them through a concentrator. And then, of course, you can go underground. That's called hard rock mining. And that's, these hills are just full of old gold mines. So you're mining gold in quartz underground.
Thank you. And then another question that I think will answer a few questions that people have is, what did you do to support yourself after the gold discovery?
I had numerous businesses. I made furniture for a while with a friend of mine, and then I started a winery. I made wine and brandy. I had 14 acres up at the top of the hill over here, which we terraced, and friends of mine, Chinese friends of mine actually helped me terrace the hillside, and we grew grapes and also fruit up there to make wine and brandy. I actually won an award for my wine at the county fair in 1854, but I couldn't produce enough to make it a living out of it. So I was always rather marginal.
Another question that I'm actually going to throw back to the class. The question is, how old were you when gold was discovered? So if you were born in the year 1810 and gold was discovered in 1848, how old was James Marshall when he found that first piece of gold that led to the California Gold Rush? While they're thinking about that, I'm going to throw out another question because it seems like we have a class listening in. Again, if James Marshall was born in 1810, how old would he be today in the year 2020? So I'm going to let you guys kind of think about those and see if we can get those answers. Throw a little math in with history today. That is correct. He would have been 37 years old when he discovered gold. All right, anybody want to give us a guess on how old he would be today? Amber, you're right. He would have been 37 when he discovered that first piece of gold. Noel comes in. You would be 210 years old today.
That's correct.
So happy birthday, James Marshall.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for spending your birthday here with us, answering our questions.
My pleasure.
I think that's about all the questions we've got in, and I think that's perfect timing. We're about 20 minutes in. So I want to thank you again, James Marshall, for joining us, especially on your special day. I hope you can go maybe look for some more gold, get rich today. And I'm going to flip this around back to me for a sec. And I want to remind everybody that we're going to be doing this again today, 11, 1, and 2 o'clock. Join us right here on Facebook Live. We're going to be introducing you to some more characters of the Gold Rush and letting you ask us questions for virtual Gold Rush Live this year. So thank you so much for joining us for our first one, and we hope to see you all back at 11, 1, and 2 today, and 10, 11, 1, and 2 tomorrow. Bye. See you guys soon.